What is happening there, Game Dude here, and we're going to be talking about Nintendo and their suit against Palworld and the reason as to why they've done it, because we now actually have details about the whole situation, or at least a good summation of it so far. So, just before I get into the details, just wanted to say, hey, if you like my videos, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Doing those two things usually helps proliferate my videos across YouTube, and of course putting comments into the comment section, of course, like just talking about anything really, that also helps too, just to kind of help my videos in the YouTube algorithm. But with that being said, let's actually talk details about Nintendo and Palworld. And I think this PC Gamer article by Harvey Randall does an excellent job in highlighting as such, so I will link this in the description below. So let's actually talk about it. So just to provide a bit of a context, Nintendo sued Palworld developer Pocket Pair middle of September, and effectively what ended up happening is that they were doing a patent infringement lawsuit, not to be confused with a copyright lawsuit, which is very different. So copyright can be anything in relation to any form of creative media, whether it be art, music, whatever have you, that falls under copyright protections. Now, that being said, just because some pals look very similar to Pokemon from Pokemon, that isn't what's being claimed here. Rather, it's more the technology around games functionality, something along the lines of like mechanics as such. So say for example the Nemesis system, which has been used as a very good example to kind of illustrate, where the Nemesis system that exists in the Shadow of War games, pretty much like an orc kills you, so then your main character, and therefore that orc then becomes a more important character later on, and then when you kill him, then you can kind of have a bit of barley bastard back and forth between yourself and a bunch of orcs, and it really starts to kind of highlight the orcs in the world, like the enemies, the characters, whatever have you, social stature, all of these elements. And so it's a very, very good system. Unfortunately, no one can actually use it because that patent falls under WB specifically. So what is the situation with Palworld? So to give a basic idea, apparently Nintendo has had some patents under its belt, and so patents, just to give a very idea, pretty much has to be something that is a new concept, that is not obvious, can't be general, it can't be any sort of abstract idea, can't be anything creative because that falls under copyright, like the creative and abstract ideas. And it cannot be a brand. Pretty much it's an idea that is new, that a company wants to own. And that is what a patent is. And it can't be too broad either, because patents can easily be thrown out if they are not all that specific. Now, Nintendo has actually been seen editing their patents, so to speak, in order to try and pretty much create wider breadth in what their patent falls under, in order to have Pocket Pair's game, or rather Palworld, to end up actually falling under it. So the patents in question are these two right here. We have US 18/652-847 and US 818/652-883. So the first one we're looking at here is this one right here: storage medium, storing game program, game system, game. Okay, so none of these words have anything to do with the specific patent, to be completely honest. Let's actually talk about what this patent is. So basically, it is aiming and throwing, or aiming and shooting while moving. So basically, if you were to aim down sights in a third-person shooter, so let's use the PlayStation controller for it as an example. If you hold down L2 to aim down sights, the right stick to aim at something, and then R2 to shoot, ta-da! That is pretty much this patent in a nutshell. So it's a long description, but first mode, aiming directions in a virtual space, specifically a game, and is determined by a second operation of input. So the first operation would be the aiming of direction, pressing the L2. The second input would be the actual aiming of location with the right stick, and then the player causing something to launch is the R2 button in the direction which they're aiming, usually an item or something. So you could say that bullets from a gun is like an item that is being flung in a direction that is being aimed at. So that's the basic idea of this patent. And then the second patent is specifically, this is going to be an interesting one. In an example of a game program, a ground boarding target, so like a vehicle for example, or an air vehicle, like you can board an object that you can be inside of that will transport you from one location to another. Yeah. Basically, it's being able to ride land or air vehicles, and it doesn't need to be just limited to vehicles. It could be Pokemon as well, for example, or like say for example, if you're riding on like an airship in a Final Fantasy game, for example, or you're riding on a, pretty much I think it's just covering land and air. I don't see anything about it covering like ocean crafts, for example. So and that's really just game characters moving along within a vessel that can move a group of individuals either through the ground or air. So pretty much what's happening here is actually quite interesting, because both of these, you can see these patents are filed in, like, you know, Japan, which is active in 2021, US is pending in 2022, Japan active 2023, and then 2024, Japan active, Japan pending, US pending. So these two that are pending here, they haven't actually been approved yet and could very well be thrown out. This is for the aiming and shooting, and this is for the land vehicles. So these last two in the US and Japan are actually very much pending as well, whereas they're actually changing the patents, so it's just a matter of time as to whether or not these patents are actually going to get approved. But pretty much what's happening here is that it seems like Nintendo is actually wanting to sue Pocket Pair in both Japan and the US. They've already sued them in Japan, but they haven't been approved for the patent and the changes and adjustments that were made by Nintendo. And of course, this also does both fall under Nintendo and Pokemon Company for both of these patents. So it's actually interesting to see what's happening here. The fact that Nintendo has actually opened themselves up so you can clearly see what's going on with this whole situation effectively. Now, this article, again, just does a great job of explaining things, but these last couple of paragraphs really puts into perspective what's going on. Pretty much a not final rejection is essentially by way, pretty much, yeah. If they were to get it rejected at the end, they have no grounds to sue, effectively. And that could really put things in a bad spot for Nintendo. Now, so even if that does happen, Nintendo's not out of the running just yet, but we'll need to wait until October 19th to respond to the first objection, and then 31st to respond to the second. Okay, so you can reject, object twice. So in relation to the, yeah, okay. Yeah, so pretty much, yeah, Nintendo is exposing itself in a big way, which I did mention earlier. Like, I think they're putting themselves in a bad position, because if a patent is too broad, it'll give Pocket Pair a way for them to make the patent to go away, because you've given them an opportunity that they've already existed. Because the thing is, if those adjustments of the patent was made after Palworld was already released, and Palworld released back in January or February, I can't remember. No, it released last year. Crap. Passage of time. Yes, it released. Actually, I can't remember. It released before the changes to these patents were made. Let's put it that way. And any adjustments to the US version of these patents would increase the risk of that happening. But it seems like, yes, as mentioned, yeah, Nintendo is steadily preparing a lawsuit in the US. It does not seem in any position to file one right away, and that's because those patents aren't final. So, what's happening, pretty much the very real reason as to why this is all happening, is that Nintendo is editing their patents in order for Palworld to fall under it, so that they can then sue the living daylights out of Palworld and get all the money for all they're worth and drive them completely out of the market. Because if Pokemon can't exist as like the sole proprietor of monster catching, monster hunting, pocket monster catching, pocket monster battling, and everything else in between, if they can't exist in the way in which they already have, then they are just going to try and drive their opponents out, or their foes out, I should say. Pokemon jab right there. By way of the legal system, which seems incredibly petty, and it just sucks, man. Like, why on earth would you do such a thing to a company that's actually doing a better game than Pokemon does? But the thing is that Pokemon is so huge and sells so wide that it's just not even funny. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. I'd be very interested to know what the general consensus is with everyone out there. And hey, if I did get anything wrong, please comment that in the comments below, because I'm no lawyer, but I do want to at least edit things to make things seem a bit more succinct, and that might be like, you know, adding it as a pinned comment, as my own comment, or adding it like, you know, into the description as well. But yeah, I'm fascinated to hear what everyone has to say. This is a sucky situation for the developers of Palworld, because people on the internet were actually faking evidence that they had actually stolen from Nintendo when they never actually had. And people have been talking about it, proliferating that news on the internet, and now it's become, you know, like, some people actually believe that Palworld devs actually stole from Nintendo when they actually did not. It's funny to, you know, kind of look at things holistically and from a distance. But in saying that, I didn't really do much research, so I could very well be wrong about some of these things. So I do absolutely want to make it fundamentally clear. I'm just talking about this because this is a fascinating yet very interesting thing that is happening. Not just the patents that are being edited, but what they represent. Because a lot of games exist with both of these patents in mind. These ideas do in fact exist, and I feel like they should just get thrown out. But it's a matter of time before we see what actually happens. So with all that being said, like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 300 subs by the end of the year. I do have my Patreon link in the description below, so if you want to toss a buck my way, you can absolutely do that. And with all that said and done, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.